The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor. Picture yourself at 7 years old. You're playing with your younger sister on the top bunk of your bed. The world has transformed into an epic battlefield. Your toy soldiers stand ready on one side, her colorful plastic ponies lined up on the other. It's shaping up to be a battle for the ages. Then, in the heat of the moment, she gets a little too excited and tumbles right off the edge. You hear the crash on the floor. Your heart stops cold. You peer over the edge, and there she is, down on all fours, a wail of pain and shock building in her little throat. You know exactly what's about to happen. The scream. Your parents, jolting awake, big trouble heading your way. In that split second of crisis, your 7-year-old brain does the only thing it can think of. You lean over and say, "Amy, wait, did you see how you landed? No human lands on all fours like that. You're a unicorn." And just like that, everything shifts. The wail freezes in her throat. Her eyes, which were filling with tears, now fill with confusion, then wonder. Her brain has a choice to make: focus on the sharp pain in her knee, or embrace her newfound magical identity. She chooses magic. A smile spreads across her face, and she scrambles back up onto the bed, no longer a 5-year-old who just took a tumble, but a mythical creature, ready for the next adventure. That little boy was Shawn Achor, the author of the book we're exploring today, The Happiness Advantage. And in that simple, beautiful moment, he stumbled upon a profound truth about the human brain, a truth that would later form the bedrock of a scientific revolution. What if I told you that for generations, we've all been taught a formula for success that is fundamentally broken? We're told, if you work hard, you will become successful, and once you become successful, then you'll be happy. We chase that next promotion, that perfect grade, that target weight, believing happiness is a reward waiting for us at the finish line. But what if that's completely backward? Today, we're diving into a book that turns this old formula on its head. Shawn Achor, who taught one of the most popular courses in Harvard's history, spent over a decade studying what makes the highest achievers thrive. And what he found is the single most important lesson you can learn about performance. Happiness is not the result of success. Happiness is the precursor to success. By the end of our time together, you'll understand how to retrain your brain to see opportunity instead of obstacles, how to turn failure into fuel, and how to harness the single greatest asset you have for achieving your goals. This isn't about wishful thinking. This is about a biological advantage, a competitive edge that anyone can learn. This is the happiness advantage. Let's start with a simple observation. When Shawn Achor first arrived at Harvard, he saw it as a magical place, a profound privilege. He was a kid from Waco, Texas, who never expected to leave. For him, every moment, even the stressful ones, was tinged with gratitude. But as he spent the next 12 years there, first as a student and then as a proctor living in the dorms, he noticed something strange. Many of the brightest students in the world, living in a place that looked like Hogwarts and offered nearly limitless opportunities, were deeply, chronically unhappy. In fact, a poll found that 4 out of 5 Harvard students suffered from depression at least once during the school year. The pressure, the competition, the relentless focus on future success, it was crushing them. They were following the old formula: work hard, succeed, then be happy, and it was making them miserable. And here's the crucial part: it was also hurting their performance. The most stressed, negative, and overwhelmed students were the ones whose grades were suffering the most. This led Shawn to ask a revolutionary question. For 100 years, psychology had been focused on what's average or what's broken. It studied what makes people depressed or anxious and how to get them back to normal. But what about the outliers? What about the people who were above average? What about those students who weren't just surviving Harvard, but were thriving? The ones who were happy, energetic, resilient, and academically brilliant. Instead of studying what makes us average, he decided to study what makes us exceptional. This was the birth of a new field called positive psychology, and what it uncovered was a truth as world-changing as Copernicus, discovering that the Earth revolves around the sun. For generations, we believed happiness revolved around success, but the science shows the exact opposite is true. Success revolves around happiness. When your brain is in a positive state, it has a biological advantage over a brain that is negative, neutral, or stressed. Your intelligence rises, your creativity rises, your energy levels rise. In fact, Achor points to study after study that confirms this. Doctors in a positive mood, for instance, make accurate diagnoses 19% faster and show almost 3 times more creativity than doctors in a neutral state. Optimistic salespeople outsell their pessimistic counterparts by a staggering 56%. Students who are primed to feel happy before taking a math test dramatically outperform their neutral peers. It turns out our brains are literally hardwired to perform at their best, not when they are negative or even neutral, but when they are positive. Positive emotions flood our brains with dopamine and serotonin. These are not just feel-good chemicals, they are performance-enhancing chemicals. They dial up the learning centers of your brain, allowing you to organize information more effectively, think more flexibly, and solve problems more creatively. This is the happiness advantage in action. It's the reason the most innovative companies in the world have foosball tables, encourage fun, and create environments that spark small moments of positivity. They're not just being nice, they're being smart. They know that every burst of happiness is a direct investment in their team's creativity and productivity. So the first and most fundamental principle is to stop seeing happiness as some distant reward you'll get after you succeed. Instead, see it as the fuel you need to get there. But this raises a critical question. If happiness is so important, and if our reality is shaped by our mind, can we actually change our mind? This brings us to what Shawn calls the fulcrum and the lever. Think back to my story about Shawn and his sister. She fell, she felt pain, and she was about to cry. That was her reality. But with a single sentence, he changed her reality. He didn't deny the pain, but he gave her brain a different, more powerful story to focus on. He moved the fulcrum of her mindset. Archimedes, the ancient Greek mathematician, famously said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." Our brain works the same way. The fulcrum is your mindset, the perspective through which you see the world. The lever is your potential, what you believe is possible. If your mindset, your fulcrum, is placed in a negative or limited spot, your lever has no power. But if you can shift your mindset to a more positive and empowered place, your lever of potential lengthens, and you can achieve incredible things. It's not the weight of the world that holds us back, it's where we place our fulcrum. This isn't just a nice metaphor, it's a biological fact. One of the most stunning experiments that demonstrates this was conducted by Shawn's mentor, Ellen Langer, at Harvard. In 1979, she took a group of 75-year-old men to a retreat center for a week. They were told to pretend it was the year 1959. Everything around them was from that era: the music, the magazines, the news. They were even told to speak about past events as if they were happening in the present. For 1 week, they were to live as if they were 55 years old again, in their prime. Before the retreat, the men were tested on everything we associate with aging: strength, posture, memory, eyesight, cognition. After just 1 week of living with a younger mindset, the results were staggering. They were more flexible, their posture improved, their hand strength increased. Their eyesight improved by 10%, their memory got sharper. Independent judges who looked at photos of them from before and after the experiment guessed they were, on average, 3 years younger. They hadn't changed their biology with a time machine. They had changed their biology with their mindset. By shifting their fulcrum, they literally turned back the clock. This is the power we all possess. Reality is not fixed. It's a story our brain tells us based on where we're focusing. And we can change that story. When we view work as a chore, it becomes a chore. When we view it as an opportunity for growth, it becomes just that. This is the difference between having a job, a career, or a calling. Amy Wrzesniewski, a Yale psychologist, found that people view their work in one of these 3 ways. Someone with a job works for the paycheck and waits for the weekend. Someone with a career is invested in advancing and gaining power. But someone with a calling works because they find the work itself fulfilling. It's an expression of their purpose and their strengths. Unsurprisingly, those with a calling are not only happier but also more successful. But here's the fascinating part. It doesn't matter what job you do. Wrzesniewski found janitors who viewed their work as a calling, contributing to a healthy environment for students, and she found doctors who saw their work as just a job. The difference isn't the work, it's the mindset. It's about crafting your job to connect with a deeper sense of meaning. You can do this by constantly asking, what is the purpose of this task? What does it lead to? You can draw a line from even the most mundane email to a larger goal that you care about. And this mindset doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. This is called the Pygmalion effect. In a famous experiment, researchers told teachers that certain randomly chosen students were academic superstars with high potential. Though the teachers didn't give these students any extra time or attention, their belief in the students' potential was communicated non-verbally. By the end of the year, those ordinary students had, in fact, become academic superstars. Our belief in another person's potential brings that potential to life. As a leader, as a friend, as a parent, the expectation you hold for others can become their reality. When you see possibility in them, you help them see it in themselves. Okay, so we understand that our brain is powerful, and our mindset can change our reality. But how do we actively train our brain to use this power? We all know people who just seem to be stuck in a negative rut. This is where Shawn introduces a fascinating concept he calls the Tetris Effect. If you've ever played the game Tetris for hours on end, you might have experienced something strange. You close your eyes to go to sleep and you see falling shapes. You walk through a grocery store and you find yourself mentally rearranging the cereal boxes on the shelf to make them fit together perfectly. This is the Tetris effect. It's a cognitive afterimage. Your brain gets so locked into a pattern that it starts to superimpose that pattern onto the real world. Now, this can be harmless with a video game, but what happens when the pattern is negative? Think about a tax auditor whose job is to scan documents for errors 10 hours a day. They become an expert at spotting mistakes. But what happens when they go home? Their brain doesn't just turn off that pattern. They start scanning their life for errors. They notice the one C on their child's report card, not the 4 A's. They see the one thing their spouse did wrong, not the 100 things they did right. Their brain has been trained to find the negative, and so the negative is all they see. This is a negative Tetris effect. It locks you into a pattern of seeing problems, stresses, and hassles, and you miss the opportunities, the possibilities, and the reasons to be grateful. So, how do we reverse it? We create a positive Tetris effect. We can intentionally train our brains to scan the world, not for problems, but for positives. And the way to do this is remarkably simple. It's an exercise that has been proven in over a decade of research to permanently rewire your brain for greater optimism and happiness. It's this. Every day, for just 2 minutes, write down 3 new things you are grateful for. That's it. 3 new things. They don't have to be profound. The delicious coffee I had this morning, the 5 minutes of sunshine on my walk to school, a funny text from a friend. When you do this consistently, something amazing happens. Your brain can't just come up with 3 things on the spot. To complete the task, it's forced to start scanning your environment for positives throughout the day. It's on the lookout for things to add to the list later. You are literally retraining your brain to become a pattern recognition machine for the good things in your life. Just as the auditor's brain gets wired to see errors, your brain gets wired to see opportunities, things to be grateful for, and reasons to be optimistic. And when your brain is constantly scanning for the positive, you profit from 3 of the most powerful tools available to us: happiness, gratitude, and optimism. We've already seen how happiness gives you a performance advantage. Gratitude, in turn, has been proven to make you more energetic, more forgiving, and less likely to be depressed or anxious. And optimism. Optimism is a tremendous predictor of success. Optimists set more ambitious goals, put in more effort, and are more resilient in the face of setbacks. In one brilliant study, researcher Richard Wiseman set out to discover why some people seem lucky. He gave volunteers a newspaper and asked them to count the number of photos inside. The people who identified as unlucky took about 2 minutes to count them all. The lucky people took just a few seconds. Why? Because on the second page of the newspaper, there was a large message that read, "Stop counting. There are 43 photos in this newspaper." The unlucky people, so focused on the tedious task of counting, completely missed it. Their brains were scanning for photos, not for opportunities. The lucky people, with their open and optimistic mindset, spotted the shortcut immediately. The opportunity was there for everyone, but only some were trained to see it. That's the power of a positive Tetris effect. Now, this all sounds great when things are going well, but what happens when we fall? When we face a real crisis, a failure, or a setback? This is where we learn about falling up. When we face adversity, our brain creates a mental map with 3 possible paths. The first path is the one that leads you nowhere. The negative event happens, and you end up right back where you started, unchanged. The second path is the one we all fear. The failure happens, and it leads you further downward, to a worse place. But there is always a third path. This is the path that leads from failure to a place where you are stronger, more capable, and more resilient than before. This is the path of post-traumatic growth. We've all heard the saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." It turns out this isn't just a cliché. It's a scientifically documented phenomenon. Researchers have studied people who have gone through unimaginable hardships: cancer, natural disasters, military combat, the loss of a loved one. And while some are understandably traumatized, a significant number of people experience profound positive growth. They report a greater appreciation for life, deeper relationships, increased compassion, and a stronger sense of self. They don't just bounce back, they bounce forward. The most successful people have learned to find this third path in their everyday lives. They see setbacks not as dead ends, but as opportunities. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking creativity. They didn't let failure define them. They let it fuel them. The problem is, when we're in crisis, it's hard to see this third path. We can get trapped by a powerful psychological phenomenon called learned helplessness. In the 1960s, psychologist Martin Seligman conducted a now famous experiment with dogs. He exposed them to a situation where they couldn't escape a small, harmless shock. Later, he put those same dogs in a new environment where they could easily escape the shock by simply jumping over a low barrier. But they didn't. They just lay there and took it. They had learned that nothing they did mattered. They had learned to be helpless. We humans are the same. After a series of setbacks, we can start to believe that our actions are futile. Why bother trying? It's not going to work anyway. This mindset is the fastest route to failure. So, how do we fight it? How do we find the third path? First, we have to change our counterfact. A counterfact is the alternate scenario our brain invents to make sense of what happened. Imagine you go to a bank, and a robber comes in and shoots you in the arm. Are you lucky or unlucky? Some people will say, incredibly unlucky. I could have gone to any other bank. I could have not been shot at all. Their counterfact is a world where nothing bad happened. But other people will say, incredibly lucky. I could have been shot in the head. The people next to me could have been hurt. I survived. Their counterfact is a world where things were much worse. The event is the same. The only difference is the story they tell themselves. And here's the key. Both stories are completely hypothetical. Since you're inventing the story anyway, you have the power to consciously choose a counterfact that makes you feel fortunate and resilient, rather than helpless. Second, you have to look at your explanatory style. This is how you explain past events to yourself. People with a pessimistic style see setbacks as permanent and pervasive. This is a disaster, it's going to ruin everything, and it's never going to get better. People with an optimistic style see setbacks as temporary and specific. This is a challenge, but it only affects this one area of my life, and I can get through it. This simple difference in explanation has a huge impact on success. In one study at MetLife, salespeople with an optimistic explanatory style sold 37% more insurance than their pessimistic colleagues. They saw rejection not as a permanent failure, but as a temporary setback on the path to the next sale. The good news is, you can learn this. You can challenge your own beliefs. When you think a situation is a catastrophe, you can practice decatastrophizing. Asking yourself, is it really as bad as I think? What's a more realistic outcome? Our fear of the consequences is almost always worse than the consequences themselves. Success isn't about never falling down. It's about using the downward momentum to propel yourself even higher. It's about falling up. Even with the right mindset, though, life can feel overwhelming. Our to-do lists are endless. Our inboxes are overflowing. We're juggling a dozen projects at once. In these moments, it's easy to feel out of control. This is where we need to learn about the Zorro Circle. In the movie The Mask of Zorro, the young, impulsive hero wants to change the world all at once. He's passionate but undisciplined, and he keeps failing. He feels powerless and falls into despair. His mentor, the older Zorro, begins his training not with a grand feat, but by drawing a small circle in the dirt. This circle, he says, will be your world, your whole life. Until I tell you otherwise, there is nothing outside of it. He forces the young hero to master control within that one small circle. Once he achieves that, his circle of competence gradually expands, until he becomes the legend he was meant to be. This is a powerful metaphor for how we should approach our goals. When we feel overwhelmed, our emotional brain, that knee-jerk fight-or-flight system, hijacks our rational brain. We panic. We feel helpless. We lose our sense of control. Feeling in control is one of the strongest drivers of well-being and performance. Psychologists call it having an internal locus of control, the belief that your actions matter. When we lose that feeling, our motivation and productivity plummet. The way to get it back is to draw a Zorro Circle. When you're staring at a mountain of work or a massive long-term goal, don't focus on the entire mountain. Focus on one small, manageable first step, a circle you know you can conquer. Got 1,400 unread emails? Don't try to clear them all at once. Draw a circle around today's new emails. Your goal is just to stay on top of those. Once you've mastered that, you can expand your circle to yesterday's emails, and so on. Want to write a book? Don't think about the book. Think about one page, or even one paragraph. By focusing your energy on small, manageable goals, you do two things. First, you start to see progress, which builds confidence and momentum. Second, you regain that feeling of control, which quiets your emotional brain and allows your rational brain to get back to work. Small successes build on each other and add up to massive achievements. All it takes is drawing that first circle in the sand. But now we come to the final and perhaps most difficult piece of the puzzle. We know what to do. We know we should be more positive. We should reframe failure. We should focus on small goals. But as Shawn Achor says, common sense is not common action. We all know we should exercise more, eat healthier, and procrastinate less. So why is it so hard to actually do it? This brings us to the 20-second rule. The reason we fail to create lasting change is that we rely on willpower. We think we can force ourselves into good habits through sheer determination. But science has shown that willpower is a finite resource. It's like a muscle. The more you use it throughout the day, the more fatigued it gets. Every time you resist a donut at the office, or force yourself to focus on a boring spreadsheet, or sit still through a long meeting, you're depleting your willpower. By the end of the day, your reserves are low, and it's almost impossible to resist falling back into your old easy habits. Our brains are wired to follow the path of least resistance. This is why, after a long day, we're more likely to collapse on the couch and watch TV than go for a run, even if we know the run would make us feel better. The remote control is right there. The running shoes are in the closet. The TV is on the path of least resistance. So if we can't rely on willpower, what do? We have to change the path. Instead of trying to push through the resistance, we eliminate it. This is the 20-second rule. You can turn bad habits into good ones by making your desired habits just a little bit easier to start, and your undesired habits just a little bit harder. Shawn Achor wanted to practice the guitar every day, but his guitar was in a case, in a closet. It only took about 20 seconds to get it out, but that tiny bit of activation energy was enough of a barrier that he rarely did it. His willpower wasn't strong enough to overcome that small resistance. So he changed the environment. He took the guitar out of the closet and put it on a stand in the middle of his living room. Now, it was actually easier to pick up the guitar than to avoid it. The path of least resistance had changed, and he successfully built the habit. You can apply this to anything. Want to eat healthier? Don't rely on willpower to avoid the junk food in your pantry. Just don't buy it in the first place. Put the healthy snacks at eye level in your fridge, already chopped and ready to eat. You're lowering the activation energy for the good choice. Want to watch less TV? Take the batteries out of the remote and put them in a drawer in another room. That extra 20 seconds of effort might be all it takes for your brain to say, you know what? Never mind, I'll read a book instead. Want to exercise in the morning? Don't make a series of decisions when you're groggy and your willpower is low. Make them the night before. Lay out your gym clothes. Better yet, sleep in your gym clothes. When you wake up, all you have to do is put on your shoes and go. You've put the good habit on the path of least resistance. Lasting change is not about strength. It's about strategy. Lower the barrier to the good habits and raise the barrier to the bad ones. Change the path, and you'll change the destination. Now we come to the final principle, the one that ties everything together. We've talked about training your individual brain, but we don't live or work in a vacuum. In fact, the single greatest asset you have in your quest for happiness and success is the people around you. This is the principle of social investment. Shawn tells a powerful story from his time as a volunteer firefighter. As part of his final training, he was sent into a burning maze, blindfolded with a partner. Their instructions were clear. One person keeps a hand on the wall to find the way out. The other sweeps the floor for a dummy they need to rescue. And, most importantly, never, ever let go of your partner. Partway through, an alarm bell on their oxygen tanks went off, signaling they were almost out of air. It was a trick. The instructors had set them to go off early, but in their panic, they did the one thing they were told not to do. They let go of each other. They both got lost, crawling in circles, alone and terrified, until the veteran firefighters had to go in and save them. The lesson was unforgettable. When you're in a crisis, your instinct might be to turn inward and go it alone. But the only way to get out safely is to hold on tight to the people around you. This is profoundly true in our work and in our lives. When the pressure mounts, our tendency is to hunker down, to eat lunch at our desks, to cancel plans with friends, to retreat into our own little bunker. We think we're being focused, but we are actually cutting off our greatest resource. One of the longest-running studies in history, the Harvard Men's Study, followed a group of men for over 70 years. When the lead researcher was asked to sum up the secret to a long, happy, and successful life in one word, he said, love, full stop. More than grade point average, income, or career prestige, the single greatest predictor of happiness and success was the strength of their social relationships. Social connection is not just a nice-to-have, it's a biological necessity. When we connect with others, our bodies release oxytocin, a hormone that reduces anxiety and improves focus. Strong social support bolsters our immune system, lowers our stress, and makes us more resilient. In fact, the support you get from your social network is like the offensive line for a quarterback. It protects you from the hits, giving you the time and space you need to perform at your best. Without them, you're going to get sacked, again and again. So the most successful people do the opposite of what most of us do under pressure. They don't divest from their relationships, they invest in them. They know that every conversation, every shared lunch, every moment of connection is a deposit into their most valuable account. And this doesn't just mean having deep, lifelong friendships. Organizational psychologists have found that even brief, high-quality connections at work, a friendly greeting in the hallway, an interested question about someone's weekend, can give both people a jolt of positive energy that improves their performance for hours. This brings us to the final and most beautiful part of Shawn Achor's message. All these principles, the happiness advantage, the fulcrum and the lever, the Tetris Effect, falling up, the Zorro Circle, the 20-second rule, and social investment, are not just for you. They create a ripple effect. Our emotions, our mindsets, and our behaviors are contagious. Thanks to specialized brain cells called mirror neurons, we subconsciously mimic the feelings and actions of the people around us. When you see someone smile, a part of your brain smiles too, even if you don't show it. When someone around you is anxious or negative, that feeling can spread like a virus. But the reverse is also true. Positivity is contagious. When you start to practice these principles, you don't just change your own life. You start a positive ripple that spreads to your friends, your family, your team at work, and even to people you don't know. Researchers have found that our influence extends out 3 degrees of separation. By making yourself happier and more successful, you have the potential to positively impact the lives of nearly 1,000 people. One positive person on a team can infect the entire group with a better mood, leading to more cooperation, less conflict, and higher performance. And so the journey that starts with a simple choice, the choice to believe that happiness can come first, doesn't end with you. It ripples outward, changing the worlds of everyone you touch. That small act of choosing a more positive mindset, like the flap of a butterfly's wings, can create a hurricane of positive change. As we wrap up our journey through the happiness advantage, I want to take a moment to reflect on why this message is so incredibly important, especially right now. We live in a world that is obsessed with productivity, with achievement, with getting ahead. And from a very young age, we are taught to sacrifice our present happiness for the promise of some future reward. What Shawn Achor does so brilliantly is to show us with undeniable science that this is a terrible bargain. It's not just a recipe for a less joyful life. It's a recipe for a less successful one. The idea that a positive brain is a more effective brain is, to me, one of the most empowering discoveries of modern psychology. It tells us that the time we invest in our own well-being, in gratitude, in connection, in finding meaning, is not a luxury. It is the most strategic investment we can make in our own performance. This isn't about wearing rose-colored glasses or pretending problems don't exist. That's not happiness, that's delusion. The happiness advantage is a work ethic. It's the practice of training your brain to see the ways to rise above your circumstances. It's the realization that happiness is not the belief that we don't need to change. It is the realization that we can. For anyone just starting out on their journey, whether that's high school, college, or a new career, this message is a game changer. It frees you from the tyranny of, "I'll be happy when," and gives you permission to build a life that is both successful and deeply fulfilling, starting today. So how can you start applying these ideas right now in a simple, practical way? I'd suggest picking just 1 or 2 things. First, try the 3 good things exercise. Tonight, before you go to bed, take out a notebook or a piece of paper and write down 3 specific good things that happened today and why they happened. It will take less than 2 minutes, but it is the single most powerful habit for retraining your brain to see the positive. Second, pick 1 habit you want to build and apply the 20-second rule. Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow. Want to spend less time on your phone? Leave it to charge in another room overnight. Make the better choice the easier choice. And third, make a social investment. Right now, think of 1 person, a friend, a family member, a teacher, who has helped you recently. Send them a quick text or email expressing your gratitude. It takes 30 seconds, but that small act will strengthen a bond, give you both a burst of happiness, and remind you that you're not on this journey alone. That was a summary of The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor. We've explored the core principles today, but I'll be honest with you, A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the major cities and highways, but it can't let you experience the culture, taste the food, or feel the warmth of the sun. The real magic happens when you read the book for yourself. It's in the quiet moments, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see your potential and your daily life. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.